Hello, hello, fearless listeners. Are you ready for another episode of Let Fear Bounce? It's the podcast that's all about conquering challenges and facing our fears. I'm your host, Kim Langling, and each week we'll dive into inspiring stories, expert insights, and practical tips to help you turn your fear into your greatest ally. So sit back, relax, grab that cup of coffee, and let's discover how to make fear our bouncing board towards a life filled with endless possibilities right here on Let Fear Bounce. Have you asked yourself who's going to take care of your pet should something happen to you? Well, I've got an answer for you. The Do-It-Yourself Pet Estate Will Kit that gives you peace of mind that your family pet will be cared for when you are no longer physically able to care for them, with easy step-by-step instructions that guide you through the task of completing forms necessary to add your furry loved one to your existing will. Visit KimLanglingAuthor.com to find out more. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. This is Kim Langling, your host, and I am so glad that you're spending just a small part of your day with myself and my special guest today, Jennifer Carr. Now, this is kind of fun because I was a guest on her podcast just a short time ago, so we decided to swap and have her come on as my guest. She, too, is an author, folks. She's always enjoyed books, writing, and daydreaming, and she wanted to know what it would feel like to combine all three of those passions and write a book. And so she did. She's got numerous books of works in progress, but she's got two that are published right now. One is called No Matter What, and the second one in the series is called The Lost and Found. And we are going to dive into that, folks. But also, and as many of you know that you've been listening or following this show for any time, I love animals and I love coffee. And you know what? Guess what? Jennifer does too. So this is awesome to have her as my guest. Jennifer, welcome to Let Fear Bounce.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here and hang out with you today.
It's fun, isn't it? It's fun to turn this around and have you as my guest. Very fun stuff. I love talking to authors and about what makes them tick and why they decided to write what they do. So we're going to first, okay, before we jump into your books, we do have to talk about a couple pretty important things. Animals. Okay. What kind of animals do you have?
So about 5 years ago, we purchased a farm in central Alabama, and we thought, oh, what are we going to start with? So of course we started with chickens. And so we have about 20 something chickens, and we've got a mama laying on about 20 something eggs. And so we've had that cycle of, raising our chickens and doing our own meat and that kind of thing. And then we decided, what's next? So we added some goats to the farm. So we have 3 goats, and hopefully by the spring we're going to have some baby goats. And so right now we've got chickens and goats and dogs, and hopefully we'll be adding a pig next year. So
awesome. How fun. Yeah. How fun that is.
It is, and it's a learning experience too.
Oh, I bet. But how fun to see that whole cycle, with the chickens. Just the chickens alone would be fun to watch.
Yes, it is. It's so much fun. I mean, because we went into it, we lived in a subdivision with neighbors like 2 feet on either side of us. And then we decided, hey, let's buy a farm and see what we can do. And now it's an obsession. So
I think that's cool, though. You did, you did it. You did it.
We did it. We're doing it.
Yeah. How fun. Now, coffee. Are you like, a coffee aficionado, or do you just grab whatever you can just because you need the caffeine?
Listen, I am a coffee snob. I hate to say it, but I am such a coffee snob. And I even so far as like I use a pour over because I'm so particular about how my coffee tastes. And so when I go places, I'm like, do you do pour overs? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh. I'll drink it because it's coffee, right? Coffee is life, but
coffee it's the magical elixir of life.
Nobody likes me, and I don't like anybody until there's coffee involved.
I couldn't agree more. I'm right there with you, sister.
Yeah.
I understand. I have a pour over. No, I have a French press. I don't have a pour over. I have a French press, and I don't use it as often as I should. Yeah, I'm kind of picky. I'm a little picky on how my coffee tastes, and I got myself a couple little extra gadgets, so you can get your foamy milk and make some, pretty awesome cappuccinos or iced coffee at home, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I'm a purist though. I will say, like, I drink it straight black. Like, I drink it black, and the darker the better. I will drink a latte, if it's done right, but for the most part, just black, dark coffee, and I'm happy.
I add Starbucks iced brew to mine. The
That's
flavored.
good too.
That's what I
Yeah.
use as my creamer. I don't use creamer. So I use the Starbucks iced coffee, like the mocha latte, whatever.
Hmm.
Literally 2 tablespoons of that in, and that's my creamer for my coffee.
I'd
So
like
it's
to put
coffee
some
and coffee
coffee
is
in
what
my
I'm doing.
coffee. Yeah.
But it's awesome. And
Yeah, it
that stuff
is.
has espresso in it, so it gives you that little extra boost in the morning.
Woo, yeah, you're really fun then.
I'm jumping. I'm a little jumping bean sometimes, I tell you.
That's awesome.
Okay, so now that important stuff is out of the way, we can we can get into the books here. So No Matter What was your first book,
Yes.
and the second one was Lost and Found. So how did the first off, let's share the genre that it's in and why you write in that particular genre.
Okay, so the Lost and Found and No Matter What are both Christian fiction, romantic suspense, really more romance in the first one than the second one, but there's still relationships and that kind of thing that develop into the Lost and Found, as it's the second part that follows the same characters into the next phase of their lives. No Matter What just kind of started as I had a dream one night, and I woke up and I thought, I need to know how my dream ends. And so I started writing it out because I just wanted to see how it ended. And it's very different than what I thought it was going to be, but that's how it turned into a book. And I sat down, I got 4 chapters in and went, I think I'm going to write a book. So I started writing and I have a book. And
That's
then I
so
finished
fun.
that.
That's
I
so
know, it's
fun. It started
crazy.
from a dream. I
It
love
did.
that. I love that.
And it wasn't like a dream that, says, Jennifer, you must write a book. No,
Right.
it was just like, I needed to know how the story ended because I love stories and I love reading and I love writing. And so I thought, well, let's just put our hand to it and see what happens. And then of course, I get to the end of that and I said, well, what happens next? And so I wrote the second book. And so
So will there be a third in that one? Is it going to keep going for a while?
So the third book that I have coming out in February is not actually the follow-up, which I've had several people, they're like, well, we're going to read it anyway. They're a little disappointed, but I'm still letting that story marinate. There is an epilogue at the end of The Lost Found that kind of implies that something could happen. And so the story is building in my head. I just haven't put it on the page yet.
Well, if they haven't, if all those characters and stuff haven't told you what they want to do yet.
Exactly. They have to. And that's so funny because so many people don't understand. And I didn't really know this is how it worked either because I'd never tried writing a book before. But like if they're not in the mood to cooperate, words will not come.
Right.
It just won't happen. Yeah.
Right. Now I typically write nonfiction, but I have a fiction book I've been working on for quite a while. And it's hit or miss. Sometimes I'll sit down and I'll write like 1,000 words, and then I won't sit down and look at it for another 2-3 months. Just because, and mine has wood sprites and fairies and stuff like that in it.
That takes a lot of imagination power.
And if they don't come and tell me what they're doing and what little adventures they've gotten up to out there in the woods, then it's not getting written. So I have to wait on them to tell me. And sometimes my dog tells me what they're up to. So it all depends on my dog and the wood sprites and the fairies. So there you have it.
Yes, it's so true. And like you have these conversations with them, you're like, that is not what I wanted you to do. Like when you do put it on the page, you're like, that's not what I had in mind.
And people, maybe a lot of people don't realize that there is just a smidge of crazy in every author.
That's right. This is us dealing with our mental health the best way we know how right now.
That is exactly. See, there you go. Speaking of mental health, now don't give us a little bit about your professional background. You've got quite a bit going on back there.
So I am a marriage and family counselor by trade. I've kind of cut back a lot, especially when it came to you weren't really meeting people in person, and so it was really hard, in my opinion, to like connect with people over a Zoom call and that kind of thing. I still see a couple of people here and there when they call me and say, "Hey, I need to talk to you." So I do marriage and family counseling, and I used to teach AP psychology in high school for high schoolers, and that was probably my favorite thing to do. But psychology, mental health, just all things, the brain and people, like I love it. And so that's just another reason that writing is so great, because it is like a form of therapy.
Exactly. I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Completely agree. And I think it's awesome. You've been able to take that. I'm sure that that plays a part, your background, your professional background, I'm sure plays a part in your writing. And if so, give us a couple little instances of how that plays a part in your writing.
Oh, it absolutely does. And no matter what, the main character, her name is Jess, and she has the ability to read people's body language and micro expressions, and she there's a physical touch component where just like it's an intuitive thing, but it's stronger than like what you would think a normal person would have, and it is an actual science that is used by the FBI. They oh gosh, what is his name? Lightman, I think is the name of the group. He has an entire, I don't know what he even calls it, like a program that the FBI uses to teach FBI agents how to read micro expressions. That's like the tiny twitch of the eye or like
Right.
flaring nostrils and stuff like that. And so using my background in psychology and people studying and that kind of thing, I thought that's a pretty cool skill that she could have. And so she uses it to work alongside the FBI and stuff like that. So yeah, it does play a big part, and just understanding people in general helps to create better characters, which that's something else that I like to offer for authors on my website. I have a whole like resources for authors thing, and there's a whole free series about how to use psychology to create better characters, so that you can tell better stories. Because if you can relate to the characters, if they're relatable, your stories will be more realistic and the readers are more likely to stay connected to the story. And so yes, psychology plays a big part of writing for me.
Well, what a cool thing that you've got resources like that on your website. So folks, go check that out for sure. I
Yeah,
believe your website is jcarwrites.com, right? So it's
that is
really
it.
easy,
That is it.
JCARR writes.com. And I was on your website, but I did not click on the resources tab, and I should have. But how
There you
cool
go.
that you give some nuggets in there of how to utilize psychology in your
Oh
writing.
yeah. Oh yeah. And it's one of those things that, you think you can just create characters out of the blue and be like, okay, this person has brown hair and brown eyes, and they like to speak with an accent or something, but there's so much more to your character, and it have to stay consistent. And because you don't want your character to have a personality switch unless it's like a traumatic brain injury halfway through your story,
Right.
like
Right.
yeah, so
And you don't want all of your characters to have TBIs going along the way. So
exactly. And you don't want, the same person to be talking to the same person. We all have different personalities, and so your character should too.
there you go. It's like
Yeah.
internal family systems. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I find that fascinating.
It is. And we don't really always think of family as a system, and we don't really see all the parts working together to make one unit. But I mean, how
Well,
boring would it be?
most people wouldn't look at them as parts. They'd be like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
crazy. I have multiple personalities.
Right.
No, you don't. No, you
Right.
do not. But there are all kinds of parts. I have been delving into that for
It's very cool.
the last couple years. And I've got my parts. They've got names. I know what they look like. I know what they sound
Hmm.
like. I know what their purpose is. Sometimes I don't agree with their purpose. Or another one creeps in out of the blue, and you're like, who are you and where'd you come from? You know?
Exactly. Like, or
But they
am
all
I am
play a
I
part in who you are. Some of them there to
yes.
protect, you know,
Hmm.
what
Also, I was
was
gonna
it?
say, I was like, sometimes am I throwing up a defense mechanism? Like, where's this coming from? Yeah.
It's a fast. So another thing to look into, folks, it's called
Yes.
IFS, Internal Family Systems. Check that out. It is really fascinating if you want to delve a little
Hmm.
deeper into yourself and why you might do some of the things you do. Pretty darn interesting. I'm actually I've started, and that's another one. I have several things in progress, like you do. One of them is it's going to be a book, but it's going to include all the parts. They're the characters. The parts are the characters. And
Yes.
they're all so different. They're all so different. Some of them are human, some of them are not. It all depends.
Hmm.
But I've got something what I have now is the parts and their bios,
Nice.
who they
That's one of my
are. I've
favorite
given them
parts.
names. I mean, it's really it's been fascinating. Truly, it's been a fascinating little journey digging into that and going down that little rabbit hole. But yeah, I've got bios written for all of them. And I'm like, I'm gonna do something with this one of these days.
That's one of my favorite parts, is creating characters and writing out who they are and what role they're going to play in things. Where do you get inspiration for characters? Like what made you come up with that idea?
Well, the internal family system, I'll just be honest, I live with PTSD, so I do speak to a VA counselor.
Oh yeah.
And she brought that up to me.
Mhm.
And she said, a lot of the veterans aren't interested because it makes them feel crazy. I don't have multiple personalities. And she goes, but Kim, you're a creative, you're a writer. And I think this might actually be something that you could really grab onto.
Mhm.
And she explained it to me. And I said, let's go. you know?
Yes,
So it was very
absolutely.
exciting to start it. And she was loving it, because she said most of the veterans that she talks to aren't open to it as open, but those that are more on the creative end are, and they benefit from it.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
it's been so on my own. Outside of that, on my own, I dug more deeper into it, got a few books, and then I'm like, I could, these are all characters, and I can turn, they can all
Yeah.
be part of a bigger story. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
something I'm picking at here and there, because
I
that's a
like
little
it.
more
That's
personal.
right. I get that. And that is hard sometimes, to separate yourself from the characters, to make sure, because and I get asked that all the time. They're like, "Did you base Jess on you?" And I'm like, "Well, no, it's just I write what I know, and this is what
Yeah.
I know." And I did have to do some research on it, because I am not a micro expressions expert or anything like that, but I do have strong intuition, so I know how that works. And so yeah, there are things that I know that I have written into characters, but she is not based on me and I am not her.
Yeah. I have found that that's another thing. People think that authors base their characters on themselves. I think there might be little tiny bits. There has
Mhm.
to be, because you're writing it.
Mhm.
But,
Mhm.
nothing I've written has been, well, a lot of mine's nonfiction, but my stuff that's
Mhm.
fiction is really not Kim.
Yeah.
I might put some of how I would speak in there, things
Yeah.
like that, or a little personality quirk, throw something like that in there. You had mentioned the micro expressions thing. I was online somewhere. This is during the pandemic, like at the beginning when everyone was online, because that's all you could do. And I somehow ended up getting a free reading from a guy. I can't remember his name. He's really well known for it. I'm completely drawing a blank, that of the micro expressions, and he works for the FBI. And so he talked to me for a very short amount of time and then told me all kinds of stuff about me. It's like what I did with my eyebrow and what that meant, and how I
Mhm.
blinked, and how, I'd look off when I'm thinking of a thought, I look off and then come back, when I'm trying to formulate my thought. And
Mhm.
he pointed out a lot of stuff that I do that I didn't realize, but he
Yeah.
had all these meanings for it. It was amazing. And
Yeah.
I said, I go, that's actually kind of frightening,
Mhm.
because from the little bit and all those little things that he's so focused on and can see, just like that, with all his training and background and stuff,
Yes.
he described the type of personality I am with a lot of detail. And I had never met this guy, so it was fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it is, because you make these, like, they are literally unconscious. You have no idea that you're doing them.
Right.
And sometimes we do have body language, like I talk with my hands all the time, and we do have body language that we're aware of. But then it's the little twitches, that's how people can, win at poker so well. Sometimes they can read
Right.
people's expressions to know that's your tell. You don't even know you're doing it, but you have a tell. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I watch people. I'm a people watcher. I don't know if you
Mhm.
are. I've found that
Yeah.
most creatives are a
Oh
people
yeah.
watcher. And I notice a lot of things that people don't, that it's like they're blind to, whether
Mhm.
that's out in nature or out in the, a crowd of people. I notice things, and later on I'll say stuff to my sister or friends or whatever. Did you see that? Did you notice that? And I'm like, no, how do you see these things? I'm like, pay attention.
Yep. Yes. And that's the thing. Like usually people who, are experts in the micro expressions, they're super like hyper observant. Like they see everything. They're always watching. That's exhausting for me because I do love to people watch. That used to be when I first got married, our dates were really cheap. We'd go to the mall. It was a really large mall. We'd sit on a bench across from the escalators and we would watch people. And that was what we would do. Because
Did you make up
we
stories
couldn't.
about them, like who they were, where they're going, what they're doing?
Absolutely we
Heck yeah,
did,
I do it all the time.
so fun. People are fascinating to me. They scare me, but they're also fascinating to me.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm
Mhm,
right there on that
mhm.
same boat with you. Yeah, interesting stuff. Interesting stuff.
Yes. And that, it goes back to studying the family systems and the internal family systems that, getting to know who you are will also help you if you wanted to control those micro expressions. Because once you learn who you are and all of the parts that make you up, you'll realize how you act in different situations. And then you can control your responses to different situations. So, that's one way to hack the system as well, if you really wanted to go a whole different route in psychology.
I find it interesting, the whole
It
subject
is.
matter. It's very
It
interesting
is.
to me. And I've just from my own research and stuff, I inadvertently put that into play when I'm out and about with other people,
Oh yeah.
and I'm very empathetic, and I believe you are too,
Hmm.
very empathetic. So I pick up on even more cues than maybe others might, because you feel them.
Yes.
You
Yes.
feel different things. So you had asked where inspiration comes from. Most of mine is in nature.
Mm.
That's where I will little stories pop in my head, or those little wood sprites will start chit chatting. It's out in
Yeah.
nature. That's where I find my peace. That's where I breathe. And I think because of that, my mind is and my heart is open to more of that creative stuff coming at me. So nature is where mine comes from. So where does yours come from?
A lot of times it just comes from different interactions with people. One of the, it's really funny. I have a fourth book that I've been playing with. I've written a couple chapters in it just to kind of play with it because I had a sit down conversation with uh, a, a young man. He's my husband's cousin's kid. Like we're not really related, but he's part of the family kind of thing. Anyway, he has autism. He was diagnosed at a very young age with autism, and we have watched him struggle and watched his parents struggle as he grew up, just behavioral issues and just trying to find where he fits. And now he is 18, and it was just sitting at the table with him, like, I don't know, 4 weeks ago. We were sitting there having this conversation about his future plans, and he's just a totally different kid. You can tell that he still struggles socially and that kind of thing, but he's got goals and he's got dreams and he's got things that I don't even think his parents ever thought he would actually be able to pursue because they were in the trenches so hard for so long. And after sitting down and talking with him, I thought he would be a fascinating character. And like this story started popping into my head. I'm like, who would he interact with? How would he interact? And the interactions we had. And next thing you know, I've got character profiles. Like I'm talking 2 and 3 page character profile on him written out. And I'm like, and this is going to be my next set of characters that I work on once. So people are my inspiration. So be careful. You might end up in a book.
Hey, and that's what
Right?
makes it fun.
It does. It
Yeah, you
does.
can tell your family and friends, see if you can figure out which part of you is in which character.
Exactly. And if I'm mad at you, you'll know.
Right. Yeah.
Just kidding.
Just your subtle little dig through the books. You got to read all my books. You got to buy all my books to figure out.
That's right. How does our relationship end up? Are we happily ever after, or
You see what an amazing marketing ploy that would be, huh? You want to find out
oh,
if I like you or
absolutely.
not? Buy my book.
Oh boy.
Probably not the
There
best way to go about it, but hey.
funny story about people thinking they're inspirational. Um, my I know
Just
that's a
makes me
terrible way to
laugh
put
saying
it.
that.
So, the male main character in No Matter What, he is a cybersecurity guy for in the army, and what happens in the book is he stumbles across some nefarious things going on, and in behind the scenes, like, there's something happening in the codes and that kind of thing. And it's like, oh my goodness. And he starts to investigate on his own outside of his job. And something happens, and I won't give too much away, but my husband is also he was, now he is in management, but he was a cybersecurity guy. And it was just by chance, like, this is what the guy did in my dream. And so, it just so happens. And yes, I know that dreams sometimes are your subconscious processing things. So that it may be that it was based on him. I don't know. But my husband is not military. Anyway, so the cybersecurity guy is investigating, and my husband's reading the book, and he's like, did you base this on me? Is this me? Is he me? And I was like, you better hope not. And he was like, oh, and I was like, just keep reading. And so he read it, and he finished the book, and he was like, I can't believe you did that. And I was like, aren't you glad it wasn't you? So, there are just some times that you don't want to be the inspiration.
There's a couple of authors that I've had on the show a couple times. It's a male-female duo that they write books together, and their books are based on, they're in the tech field. And so their books are based, and they're kind of, thriller type things, all about, from the premise of the, the tech field and cyber, whatever it is you just said. I'm trying to think, like, but anyway, they were fascinating to talk to, and how they come up with their characters. And because a lot of it is what they do each day as their full-time jobs, and they pull that in of, what if, and what if, or this, they weave it in, this is happening, but most folks aren't aware of it. I mean, it's exciting and fascinating to talk to people that use what, and I know that you're not into the cybersecurity arena, but you brought that into your book. I think with the psychology stuff is going to be, it's probably really cool putting that into that character, your psychology background, but be able to take what it is that professionally and tweak those into the characters. I think that's awesome.
It's pretty fun. And honestly, so my husband's name is Rob. He sent me this long message one morning. He said, I had a brainstorm about a book. You should write it. And he sent it to me. And I'm talking like there was AI involved and all this stuff. And I said, I love that you think I could write this book without your help. I mean, you're talking about right over my head with some of the stuff he was saying. And I was like, I will gladly co-write a book with you if you want to do that. And it sounds like a really great story, but I could not begin to explain to you how artificial intelligence works, much less how it would come back to bite us. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I think we're going to see a lot more. Well, and there already is. There's movies and stuff out there already, but and has been actually for quite a few years, because AI didn't just appear.
Right.
It's been around for a very long time. It just now happens to be in the public eye.
Yes. And it's becoming so like just commonplace. Like it's used for everything now. And we don't even realize
and how
some
quickly
of the dangers. Yeah.
Once it became known in the public, I sit there and I'm thinking, what month of the year is this? It's that many months, 9 months. And it seems like everyone is using some form of AI now, whether it's ChatGPT or they're doing it to create, anime characters or cartoons or people.
Yeah.
That are so lifelike for videos and stuff. Like I can't even wrap my brain around how that stuff is created. Who are the brains that created that? Because I don't understand how those brains work. I mean, that's just amazing stuff to me. It's amazing and awesome, but also frightening.
It is frightening. And I had a sit down with an entertainment lawyer a few weeks ago, and she was talking about there are some massive dangers for creatives when it comes to AI, because their art and their work is being stolen or pirated very easily through it. But also artists are using AI and ending up using other people's work unknowingly. And so like even in contracts now, like she's putting in some of her legal contracts, if not all of them, I think she might have said all of them, that you have to swear under oath here basically that you are not generating something with AI and that all of this work is genuinely yours, because if it comes back to show that you used AI, then you could be up a creek legally, and that could get real expensive really quickly.
And I wonder, I don't know if most folks, I know a lot do, probably the younger folks know more than I do, but AI is generated from what is available on the
Yes,
internet.
exactly.
So you have to keep that in mind. It's
Mm-hmm.
generated by what is available on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
And
it's got to be
unless
derived
you've
from
been
somewhere.
right, unless you've been
Yeah,
living under a rock, the internet is not always right what you find on there, because anybody could put anything on there.
that's right. Well, even Chat GPT, I think, comes with a warning that's like, this
Yes,
information may not be 100% accurate. And I'm like, uh-oh.
because they're pulling from like nothing before 2020,
Yeah.
something
So
like
it could
that.
be
They have
anything.
an actual year of where they start pulling from.
Yes.
It's incredibly interesting. And I've used Chat GPT
Mm-hmm.
for like an outline type thing, because I'm sitting there going, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of four things. I just want to think of four things. And I
Yes.
came up with two.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, so I do Chat GPT and say, okay, give me a list of four things
Mm-hmm.
about dot dot dot. And then it
Yes.
comes up and I'll be like, oh, so I use it as a brainstorming thing for
Mm-hmm.
myself when I hit that little wall. But I also know there's a and what are your thoughts on this too? I'm able to, if someone sends me something and I read it, I'm going, they did not write that themselves. Now I know AI is going to get better and better and better.
Right.
But right now I can still, because it seems like, give me your thoughts on this. AI generated stuff uses a lot of adjectives, a lot more so than what a person speaking would.
Mm-hmm.
So do you see stuff like that? Or if you're reading stuff or a blog or something like that, do you sit there and read it and you're going, I think that's AI generated?
So I picked up a book last week, and I was reading it. It had been recommended on TikTok, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I started reading it, and I was like, I swear to you, these sentences could not have been written by a person. They at least were not read by a person after they were written. Like they just they they made just enough sense to be accurate, but not enough to be human. And I thought it's bizarre, but yes, and it uses a bunch of different words that you wouldn't normally use in an everyday vernacular or anything like that. It's just kind of like, so yes, I see it quite often, and you can tell, and that's the scary part. I use Chat GPT a lot of times for, like you said, like inspirational. I was like, okay, for instance, I had a podcast with a gentleman who his specialty is Web3 social. Ever heard of Web3 social? Me neither. It was, but Rob was like, hey, you should interview this guy because I think it's something interesting. Anyway, if you know what Bitcoin is and cryptocurrency and digital dollars and stuff like that, you've at least heard of it. So Web3 social kind of integrates a lot of the digital currency and helps, it can be used to help creatives like mark their stuff so that it's harder to pirate, and they can also make like
Oh,
tiny amounts of money off of it. I can't explain it any better than that. But because Web3 social was something that I didn't understand, I was like, hey, Chat GPT, help me come up with some interview questions about Chat 3 or Web3 social that I can make myself not look like a complete idiot while, trying
yeah,
to ask these questions. So yes, sometimes it's a great tool, but it
yeah,
should not be your end all be all, because if that's what you're giving as your final product, it will be very obvious.
yes. And it
Mm-hmm.
is. To
Mm-hmm.
those that are, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm in the writing realm and so are you, so you notice it much easier than others. But that, you and I both know that there are so many people out there that will read something and say, oh yeah, that's gospel.
Yes. Yes. And technically, I mean, it's not your genuine work. Therefore, it's not your
Right.
intellectual property. Therefore, you're
Right.
stealing, even though it came from a computer. Like it's not yours. And so you
Right.
have to watch out. There's some ethics there that's really gray.
Yes. Yes. And I
Mm-hmm.
I make sure I stay on the correct side of the line for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to, because I don't know about you. I cannot afford somebody to come after me and say, that's my work and let's go to court. Like,
Right.
no.
No way. Well, and plus I want to write my own stuff.
Yes.
You know, because the way I write is not how anyone else anywhere writes.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
and the people that might know me or have read any of my stuff, if I were to all of a sudden start using AI for all that, they'd be like, Kim, who are you? And what'd you do with the real Kim?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't sound like you said, you can tell a real person. It's just the vernacular is how you worded it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just it's stilted.
Yeah. It's not your
And
voice.
flowery. I've noticed a lot of flowery words.
Yes.
And I'm like, who talks like that?
A computer that doesn't have a very big vocabulary.
Right. And doesn't have human emotions in it. So
Now
yeah.
that is a huge thing. Yes, the human emotion is taken away when you start relying on AI, when you start relying on those chat GPT prompts, even like it takes, because it is a computer, there is no human connection. And if you want your story to be good, it needs to connect with your reader, and
Yes.
it's got to be on a level beyond the head. Like it's got to
Right.
connect deeper. And so and that is not what the computer is for.
No, it's not.
No.
You and I both know that it will be used in ways it shouldn't be.
Oh, absolutely. It already has been.
It
I mean,
is.
absolutely.
It currently is. Yes, it currently is. I just know that for me, anybody that reads my stuff is going to know that Kim wrote it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's kind of like that book, that story it's an extension of who you are. Even if it's not you and the characters, you have put yourself into that book in some form or fashion, whether it's your style of writing or your style of dialogue, or people should be able to hear you in some form or fashion and get to know the writer, be like, oh, this is what's important to them, this is what they want me to hear. And therefore, like, a computer's not going to give a reader that same experience.
Right. Well, by golly, folks, I am leaving you hanging on this one. This is part 1 of 2 parts of my conversation with Jennifer Carr. So be sure to tune in next Wednesday so you can hear part 2. Have an awesome day, everybody. And that is a wrap, my fearless friends. Thanks for bouncing along with me on another episode of Let Fear Bounce. I hope you're feeling a bit motivated and ready to take on any challenge that might come your way in the coming days. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode of Let Fear Bounce. Tune in each week for your dose of inspiration from my amazing guests from all over the world. So until next time, keep bouncing forward and stay fearless, my friends. Everybody be well, stay well, and above all, be blessed.